Whenever you are ready, you may begin.
How many of you have seen the new Joker movie? Don't worry, I won't spoil it for you. But let me just say this. Society knows how to create many different types of villains. I want Oregon voters to vote yes on Measure 34, the Oregon Psilocybin Program Initiative. On November 2020, we are being asked to vote on Measure 34, which will allow the active component of magic mushroom, psilocybin, to be used to help treat mental illness and addiction in medical facilities with trained professionals. My brother has been an alcoholic since he was 14 years old. Next spring, he celebrates 12 years of sobriety because he was able to participate in a psilocybin trial. Because of that trial, I got my brother back, I got a sister-in-law, and I have some pretty rad nieces and nephews. Today, I'm going to prove to you how voting yes on Measure 34 will allow us to offer better mental illness treatments, how it will revolutionize the way that we treat alcohol and addiction, and also how it can reduce the uses of psychiatric medication. Measure 34 will help us offer better alternatives to mental illness. It will change the way that we handle mental illness and what we can offer patients. Mental health reform is crucially needed. Evidence of what we are doing and it's not working is everywhere, and we could see that all over the place. On March 15, 2012, in the National Journal, an article called A Plan for Mental Illness, Thomas R. Etzel and Barbara J. Sahakian describe what the next decade of mental health drug development should look like. And I quote, "From a research perspective, progress requires change, not only in what we do, but also in how we do it. One obvious way to do this is to allow academic scientists to investigate compounds that have been abandoned by industry." It took 50 years for society to accept Newton's gravitational laws. It is time for us to go back to the research of the 60s and start accepting that perhaps we can use psychedelics in psychiatry. Still not convinced? That's all right. Matthew W. Johnson, on December 3rd, 2018, published an article in the International Review of Psychiatric Journal titled, "Psychiatry May Need Some Psychedelic Therapy." He says this, unlike with most psychiatric medication, patients are doing their own psychological heavy lifting when they receive psychedelic treatments. And they appear successful in achieving fundamental understanding of themselves, their connection to others, and insights into the issues from which they suffer. I have been admitted to a psychiatric ward on 3 different occasions for attempted suicide. I have sat countless hours with my therapist and my psychiatrist trying to find a cocktail of medication that will allow me to treat all of my symptoms combined. Saying yes to Measure 34 will give people with mental illness the opportunity to say yes legally to natural alternatives to treat their mental illness disorder. Now that we talked about how it's going to help with mental illness, let's talk about how it's going to help with addiction. Measure 34 can transform how we treat addiction. In the book called Pass It On, the story of Bill Wilson and how the AA message reached the world, published in 1984, we read about Bill Wilson, one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, and him receiving psychedelic treatments at the VA hospital back in 1956. On page 371 of the Pass It On book, we read the following about Bill W. Bill was enthusiastic about his experience. He thought he had found something that could make a difference in the life of many who still suffered. Bill wasn't allowed by his AA board to recommend psychedelics as part of the 12-step program, but even he, the co-founder of one of the largest 12-step programs, understood the benefits that psychedelics could have in helping treat alcoholism. Jeremy Daniel and Margaret Haberman published an article back in January 24th of 2017 in the Mental Health Clinician entitled Clinical Potential of Psilocybin as a Treatment for Mental Health Condition. In this study, they aimed at helping people quit tobacco while using psilocybin as treatment. To participate in the trial, people had to be smoking at least 10 cigarettes a day and had several failed attempts at quitting tobacco usage. These are the results of their study. Over the 15-week study, no significant adverse effect occurred. 80% of the participants remained abstinent at the 6-month follow-up point. I don't know about you guys, but 80% are pretty good odds. I'm hoping that I'm going to get at least 80% on this speech tonight. I don't know that my brother would have been able to become sober had he not received that psilocybin trial. Because of that, I'm able to experience my brothers in ways that I didn't think I was going to be able to. He has so many more opportunities, and I know that by voting yes on Measure 34, we will give opportunities to other people that are struggling with addiction, that are in despair, and give them what they need to help them in their quest with sobriety. So now that we talked a little bit about how this is going to help with mental illness and how it's going to help with addiction, let's talk about how it's going to lessen the need for psychiatric medication. Measure 34 will lessen the need for psychiatric medication. Dr. David E. Nichols, president of the Ecker Research Institute of Pharmacology at Purdue University, in the 2019 documentary directed by Brian Bilikoff, produced by Gravitas Ventures, entitled Psychonautics, a comics exploration of psychedelics, is quoted to say this: "Antidepressants work in maybe half the people. But after just 1 or 2 treatment sessions of psilocybin, results yield therapeutic effects lasting for several months." In a population study from 2018 published in PLOS ONE entitled Psychedelics and Mental Health, a Population Study, Craig Johansson concluded that lifetime psychedelic usage was significantly associated with lower rates of inpatient mental health treatment and lower need of psychiatric medication. So now that I've bombarded you with all the information, and I can go on, and I have all of my research studies if you guys want to look at it, but the truth is that you need to be educated voters. And what I want you guys to do is to read the research, is to do your own study, and then it's to vote yes on Measure 34. If you are not a registered Oregon voter, you can go to the following website, which is the Secretary of State Oregon website, or you can visit the Yamhill County Election Office, which is located at 1414 Northeast Evans Street, right here in McMinnville, and you have to vote, you have to be registered to vote at least 30 days prior to the November ballot cast. So make sure you do that because your vote matters. Back to the Joker movie. If you haven't seen it, take the time to watch it, because it will show you how we decide how we treat people with mental illness, and how we decide whether we are going to vote for natural alternatives or if we're continuing to go down the path that clearly is failing. Your vote matters, and I expect you all to vote in November's 2020 election yes on Measure 34. Thank you so much.